Good morning. Thank you for coming. I know it's early, but I appreciate you being here. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of parents, students, and community members on school wellness committees. I'm Sarah. Kate is here as well. And we're from Creating Healthy Schools and Communities. All right, so overall today, we're going to be going over why you want to include parents, students, and community members on your wellness committee. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of including these people on your school committee or district committee. And I'm also going to then share some sort of how to make this happen, how to address those challenges to make it effective. So starting with why you want to include students, parents, and community members. And the overarching reason is that we don't want to be sort of imposing our wellness initiatives and directives on the people that are affected by them. So we want the people who are going to be most affected by these, which include students and somewhat parents and community members, to have a say in what we're doing. We're not doing this to them, we're doing this with them. But also, it's a federal requirement to invite students, parents, and community members to your wellness committee. So if anyone in those categories wants to join, you kind of have to let them join. It also helps provide some diverse voices and gives you new ideas. If you only have school staff on your wellness committee, you're only going to get the ideas that are kind of percolating among those people. So enlarging your committee and getting some more voices is only going to provide, hopefully, extra new, exciting ideas. It also allows you to spread that work around. So we know that staff in schools are overworked and overloaded and don't necessarily have time to spend hours and hours working on wellness committee work. So if you can get some more people, maybe a person or two who has more time in their day, you can have some of the work spread around among more people. And finally, it can provide different expertise than what you get from teachers and school staff. Particularly in those community members, you can reach out specifically to some people whose occupation is something that you would love to have on your wellness committee. So I guess I wanted to ask you, do you already have students, parents, or community members on your wellness committee? And we're a little group today, so you can come off mute and let us know what your wellness committee looks like, if you don't mind. Well, I don't know, Joy, if you can come off mute, but I know that your wellness committee, you have a whole community section that includes lots of members of the community. And I know that you also have some parents on your committee. I'm not sure if you have students. Actually, no, you do definitely have students in the high school, right? So you've kind of got all three of those groups covered, which is awesome. So now going through some of the challenges that come about when you've included all of these people on your wellness committee. So first off, recruiting members, that can be a challenge. You have to find these people and have them be interested enough that they are willing to join a committee. Scheduling meetings can be a little more complicated when you've got people who aren't in the school all the time. One of the other challenges can be finding a role for students, parents, and community members so that they have work to do and aren't just showing up to meetings and starting to get sort of discouraged that other people are doing work and they don't feel like they are contributing and might not stay on the committee. And then finally, it requires more intentional communication. So it can be easier to communicate with people that you see on a regular basis, that you work in the same building or district as, and when you start including people that aren't in the building every day, you have to communicate a little more intentionally just to make sure everybody knows what is going on. So I'm now going to go through each of these potential challenges and talk about sort of how you can address them, how you can make that work. So in terms of recruiting members, and for some wellness committees, this is the point that they're at. They haven't got any students, parents, or community members on their wellness committee yet. The committee is entirely composed of people that work for the school or the district. And you might not have parents or community members or students who are going to come up to you and say, hey, I hear you run the wellness committee and I would love to be on it. You might have to do some work to find those people. So I wanted to talk about how you can recruit. So my first suggestion, especially if you are a new wellness committee, would be to send a mass open invitation to everyone to join. And this can look like sending something home with students at the beginning of the year. I would suggest putting something on your district website, inviting people to come to a meeting. It can also be sending out a flyer to people in the community, inviting them to come. And what I would suggest inviting them to come to is more of an informational meeting. So have something, especially at the beginning of the school year, that lets people know what the wellness committee is, what kind of role they would play on the wellness committee, and really you're not going to accomplish much in terms of meeting your goals at this meeting. You're just going to be telling people sort of what the wellness committee is and having a bunch of introductions so that people can start to feel included. Another great way of recruiting people is to have a flyer at a table at open house. So on this slide, you can see sort of a flyer that we were giving out at some Lackawanna open houses. And it's just, this is what the wellness committee is. We also included a bunch of sort of wellness information about healthy eating and physical activity, and having, if you already know when that informational meeting will be, or your first meeting, putting that information on there, if not at least some contact info of who they can contact if they'd like to join. Oh, I also wanted to say, if you're handing out flyers, it's also a great idea to take down people's email addresses right away, because they might be interested enough to take your flyer in the moment, but might not do the next step of reaching out to you. So if you take the work on and you get their email address right away and you reach out to them, you've taken like sort of one of those steps when they can forget to do something from them, and then you're doing it. And then the last one is probably the most effective, and that's sending personal invitations. And this is if you know, like, this person would be wonderful, we want them on our wellness committee, send them an invitation. And I've got a little link in there to a template invitation so that you don't have to come up with your own wording for that. We've got one on our website that you can customize to what you need. So now, assuming you've gathered a bunch of people and they are interested enough that they are willing to join your wellness committee, the next challenge that you might run into is figuring out a time and place and date to hold meetings that everyone can attend. So one of the things to do is just consider a variety of times. The sort of classic school committee meeting is right before school or right after school, but you might have to switch that up, because those are times that for parents and community members, they might not be able to make it. So you might have to consider evening meetings. You might have to change the location of the meetings. So the school is a very convenient place for people that work at the school, but if you're changing that meeting time to be in the evening, it might be that the school is no longer a super convenient place. There might be a library in town, or a community building, or a coffee shop. So just the biggest advice is, once you get those people all together, ask them when it would be convenient for them to hold these meetings and where would be convenient. So just be open to changing things from how it's most often done at the school. And then lastly, hold virtual meetings. And there is definitely a benefit to having in-person meetings. You can have more of, it feels like a little bit more of like a personal relationship when you have in-person meetings, but virtual meetings are convenient, especially if you're having them evening, if you're asking parents who might have young children at home and you're not going to be able to provide necessarily childcare for those children, virtual meetings might be the way to go, or some sort of hybrids where you have some virtual meetings and some in-person meetings, different times. Just be open to trying a bunch of different things to try to make it as easy as possible for your parents, your students, and your community members to make it to your meetings. Okay, so another challenge you could run into is finding a role for the parents, the students, and the community members. And that's not necessarily true. You might have people that join your committee that are very clear on what they want out of the committee and what they're hoping to accomplish. But in case you don't, I've got some ideas for you. So to start off with, attending without a role doesn't work. Just coming to meetings and sitting and listening and not feeling like you are contributing doesn't encourage people to continue to come to those meetings. So you really want to make sure that everybody feels as though they are contributing and are sharing the work. So the first thing is ask people why they joined. What do they want the committee to accomplish? Because a lot of people have joined for a pretty specific reason, and they're going to be willing to tell you, I joined because, you know, I'm a student at the school and I would love to be able to play basketball in the gym after school with my friends, and that's not available right now, and I'd like to make that available. Or I'm a parent who would love to see my child have recess every day, and they're not getting that, so I've joined the wellness committee to try to push for that. So when you find out why they have joined, you want to try to add the reasons they've joined to your action plan. So as a committee, figure out, you know, is that something that our committee can work towards and how, and add that to your action plan. If you have a large enough committee, this is also when you can create subcommittees for, you know, a bunch of people that want to work on one common goal. They, you know, that might make scheduling the meetings easier if you can have more subcommittee meetings with fewer people and all come together, maybe virtually, less often. And then there might be some people that have joined your committee and don't have a clear idea of what they want to accomplish. So I wanted to just provide a few ideas of some ways that students, parents, and community members could be asked, you know, things that would make sense to ask those groups to do if they don't already have a strong idea of what they want to do. So for students, you can ask them to sort of collect feedback from their peers around things like school meals or taste tests or vending machine options. So they can come up with like the survey questions, and they can actually go around and ask people, complete the survey, you know, not an online survey, but an in-person survey, ask people what they think. And that's the kind of thing that I think I tried to come up with some ideas for students that even younger students would be able to do. So I think these could even be applied to elementary school students, maybe with a little bit more adult involvement. So they can be the ones who present your wellness initiatives to the school board to get their approval. Sometimes it's much easier for students to convince the school board that this is something that they should put money or time or resources towards when it's students talking about what they need, as opposed to adults talking for the students about what they need. They can also act as sort of a liaison between whatever student leadership council there is at your school and the wellness committee. And that can be important because student leadership councils often do a bunch of fundraising, and it would be nice to have some go-between between what's going on in student leadership and what's going on in wellness, just so those two are kind of on the same page. And then lastly, creating some sort of wellness marketing promotion material. So making posters for other students to see about, you know, drinking more water, why water is the healthy option. They can come up with the messaging that might be most effective for encouraging that amongst their peers. They can create the signage or the flyers themselves. So those are just a few ideas. And there's obviously a whole bunch more. They can also be involved in any of the subcommittee work that your committee is doing, participate in meetings, particularly high school and middle school kids, maybe not so much elementary school kids. Now in terms of some activity ideas for parents. So first off, asking parents if they can help you assess what's going on in the school by working on a couple of the models of the School Health Index is a great sort of introduction, maybe, you know, their second meeting or something, you're asking them to work on these. It's nice to be showing that you think that they have some knowledge and expertise about what's going on with wellness in the school. And those modules are specifically about family engagement and community involvement. You can also ask them to help you assess the wellness policy and help suggest updates. So, you know, that policy work that's, you know, completing the WellSat and all that, that doesn't require them to have intimate knowledge of what's going on in the school. So that's an area that parents could be helpful. And then creating surveys for other parents or for students, in some way soliciting feedback from sort of their peers could be one way that they could help. And then all the sort of common parent volunteer roles, but that are wellness related. So volunteering with school gardens or the walking club, or doing some before or after school playground supervision, and sort of organizing other volunteers to do those roles too could be a huge chunk of what they do for the wellness committee. And then another role could be fundraising or looking for donations for wellness initiatives. And I know, Joy, that it was a parent in Colden who did a lot of the sort of coordinating for the bike trail and looking for donations. And sort of that is an area that it can take a huge amount of time. And if you have a parent who wants to do that work and go out into the community and ask for donations and, you know, find ways to make some of these initiatives happen without the school having to spend as much money, that can be a huge way that they can contribute if that's something they're interested in. And obviously not every parent is interested in fundraising, but if they are, use that because that's really useful. And then some ideas for your community members. So again, the School Health Index, particularly Module 11, is all about community engagement or community involvement. So that's an area that you can quickly ask them to help you, you know, assess wellness. Staff wellness is an area that districts and schools usually can't put very much of their funding or resources towards. And so if you can find some community members, particularly that are involved in sort of a wellness field and can bring in resources to help with staff wellness, that can be really beneficial. Community school joint use agreements are something that we want to encourage. And that's like a very specific agreement about when other non-school users can use the school buildings and, you know, the gyms, the pools, the weight room. And so community members might be interested in working on creating those and figuring out how to staff those. So imagine your community member is someone who works for the YMCA. They might be able to bring in people that can help staff those areas to make them open to the public after school or before school. And then community members can also be very helpful at sort of planning some of your wellness events. You're creating a health fair for students, staff, and or the community could be an area that they could help with. And then I wanted to highlight safe routes to schools as an area that it's so beneficial for this to have people from outside the school working on safe routes to school, because most of this work is stuff that happens outside of your school building and school property. It is a great area to ask people from outside the building to do some of this work. So something like organizing a walking school bus or a bike bus, that is, you know, a great activity to put a parent or community member in charge of. Planning a walk, bike, or roll to school event, you know, a one-time get everyone or as many people as possible to all ride their bikes to school on the same day. These kinds of things can drum up interest and excitement about active transport to school. And it's something that you could ask those members of your committee to work on. And then coordinating with the town or city to create the safe route maps that you can then hand out to all students. That's work that is great to have community and parent members involved in. And then a walkabout or bike about, and that's sort of where you go all around the school looking at the infrastructure and what is available. Where are some areas that it wouldn't be safe right now for students to get to school walking or biking because of, there's no crosswalk at this intersection or the sidewalk ends here. So organizing that and collecting all that data is another area that I would recommend looking for community members or parents to really help you with. And in fact, the walkabouts and bikeabouts, it would be great if you can also find students to participate in that, because they might notice things that adults don't notice. I can't see over this hedge to tell if there's a car coming, because it turns out when you're 3.5 feet tall, you can't see as well. Stuff like that. All right, and so the last possible area that you can find some challenges in including all these other people on your wellness committee is the need for more intentional communication. Once you've expanded your wellness committee outside of strictly school staff, you might have to work on communication, and it might take a little bit more effort to make sure everybody always knows what's going on. So a few suggestions for that are: take meeting minutes and send them out after the meeting, so that if people miss the meeting, they still know what's going on, they still feel included, they don't feel like they can't come to the next meeting because they no longer know what's happening. Because it's likely, especially if your committee starts getting a little bit larger, that not everybody will be able to make every meeting. And then one of the things that we've set up in a couple of school districts that I think is going to be really effective is creating a shared drive, so that all committee members have access to the same documents and information. And some of the things that I'd recommend putting in that shared drive are who is on the committee. So all of their names and contact info, so that everybody can reach out to anybody else. A calendar of meetings and wellness activities of what's coming up, so everyone can see when the meetings are coming and knows if there's a health fair on this night, or if the wellness committee is attending an open house to recruit parents on this night. Your meeting minutes, because everybody should have access to what's going on in the meeting. Even if you email them out, also put them in the drive, so that if people miss that email, it's easy to find it. And then your action plans, what your committee is planning to work on, and leave room for people to put in notes about, I have a question about this, or this part has been accomplished and this was the outcome, and now we need to move on to this. So basically just everything that the wellness committee is doing, try to have a written documentation of what's going on, and then put it in this drive so everybody can see. All right, and then I just want to kind of finish with the idea that just because somebody doesn't join the committee doesn't mean that they're not interested. So if you have done all this and you've got people that, you didn't find any parents, that doesn't mean that none of the parents at the school are interested in wellness. So even though they haven't joined the committee, make sure you do the work to keep them updated on your goals and your progress and your successes. And some of the ways to do that. So for people who haven't joined the committee, but they might still want to be involved, so you can ask for feedback from students and parents around your wellness initiatives. So whether that is sending out emails, asking for people to complete a survey, or just putting your contact information sort of everywhere about wellness and say, if you have a question about this, get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer questions. Basically, make sure that you're open to hearing from people that aren't on the committee who might have questions or suggestions or ideas. Have an area on your school or district website that people can see information about wellness, that they can see updates. Maybe those are your wellness committee your meeting minutes, but maybe you don't want to put all of your minutes up there. So you write, a few outcomes from each meeting and post that regularly. So people can kind of follow along. Like, this is what the wellness committee is working on. This is what they've already accomplished. This is what they're planning. And that's not only a good way of keeping people informed, it also might lead to them joining the wellness committee in the future when they know what is happening. And then make sure those school wellness assessments, your school health index, your WellSat, your WPAT, which you probably don't know what it is yet, but we're going to be talking to you about WPAT, which is another kind of way to combine your school health index and your WellSat scores and see where you are. Make that information public. Put it on the website somewhere, have a link on your wellness page on your website so that people can see how you're doing at accomplishing wellness goals. So not only is that great for keeping people involved and updated, it's also required as part of the wellness committee to make those kind of assessments public. So basically get a spot on your district website so that you can put wellness information there. And that's all I have. I've got a few resources here that you might find useful, and all of this, the slides and the recording will be sent out to you. And I just wanted to thank you for coming and ask if anyone has any questions, or if you want to tell us how having parents, students, or community members on your wellness team is going, please speak up. We've got, a couple minutes left.
I wondered, I know you mentioned that there's a couple of the modules for the school health index that community members and parents would be good to be a part of. And I know we discussed completing the school health index pretty much as a faculty-wide thing or a school-wide thing. So it's not something that's very easy to probably bring in community members to say that. But is that something that even those modules could be given separately or to them in addition to completing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would recommend, if you've got some community or parent members, that you can send out sort of a PDF of just that module and ask them to look through it and answer the questions that they know the answers to, because there are some even in there that they might not know the answer to, but having them involved in that process is really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
And ideally, we'd have them sitting in the room while completing the full school health index, but it's just hard to get that many people for long enough to do that all together at the same time. And that's kind of why we're doing like the shortcut route of doing it at a faculty meeting. All right, if there's no more questions, thank you very much for coming, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.